Good afternoon, everybody. Goeiemiddag. It's nice to visit with everyone again. Looking through the name list, I don't see many familiar names. It looks like we've got quite a few new participants in this webinar today, and then some of the repeat offenders. And thank you for joining us again. Just as a matter of interest, I've looked through the name list quickly, and we'll possibly be doing most of the session in English due to the fact that some of our speakers are English. And we've got a mixed audience here today, as we've done with most of the Center for Finance and other Center for Technology sessions. So please bear with us. You're welcome to ask your questions in any language if we are capable to understand and deal with it. Yes, thank you for joining us today. Mitigating the effect of load shedding on schools, a very important topic. I'm going to share my screen and just take us through a few opening remarks, and we've got a panel that I will introduce to you guys now. So that we share some information from the industry. I think a lot of us are feeling the pain of the rolling blackouts, of load shedding, of the issues that we are experiencing in the country. But I think a portion of today's session is exactly that. How do we deal with it? How do we get around it? What plans do we make? As good governors, we've got to go there. Let me just quickly share the right screen here and get us going. I hope it's not death by PowerPoint, but yeah, it just gives us some indication of the pointers to look at. Hopefully my screen is shared. We want to welcome on board today Absa, the Center for Finance and Risk Management, has entered into a collaboration partnership with Absa around sustainability, around some of these things that the Finance Center is talking about. And we've got Justin Schmidt on today, head of renewables, renewable energy at Absa, going to talk to us about what their drive is and how to address these problems, especially in the school arena. Yes, just the background of the session today. We ran a survey and schools responded very quickly. It was probably open for a week or so, and we had quite a robust response on the implications, and hence we're listening to our members and sharing some information today. Maybe just a little bit of background on the Center for Finance and Risk Management. I've got a QR code on the screen there. We do publish a quarterly termly magazine to share some more information, more than a newsletter, more than just the pertinent information on a day-to-day basis, but time to reflect, time to think forward, time to look for good solutions. So look out for our next one that will be out in the next week or so. But there is a starting point. That's the launch edition of last year. That being said, let's talk about our agenda, opening remarks by myself, and we'll just give some ideas. I want to share some of the feedback. We're not breaking any poppy rules by sharing the global feedback, but we've got amazing insights and key information that I think we should be working with. I'm going to hand over to Henry van Branden from Centricity shortly to just give a little presentation from their side and what they're doing to help schools over the past few years and some case studies that they've been working with. And then Justin is also going to share some of the insights from Absa. And then we'll be, hopefully by about 3:30, we'll be opening up for a panel discussion and Q&A. So we've received some questions before the session, but please pop some questions into the Q&A and we'll take it from there. Maybe just to hit some markers for us, and I'm trying to step slightly out, zoom out of the issues at hand, that is the crunch, the critical ones. And someone the other day said, this is not energy or power now, but the same applies. No amount of money can create water. Even if we had enough money, we can't fix problems that we can't generate, issues like water, whatever the renewables are that we're using. So it's not just a money issue. There's a resource issue. There's a different thinking issue. And I think put that marker in the ground for you. It's not just fixing the short-term problem, but it is fixing a wider, probably a global problem. I have a little anecdote there. Power off, it can either equal or not equal being powerless. And that's what we're hoping to do today. You know, in the FEDSAS frame, we don't like the word empowerment. We like the word equipping, because we believe, if if you want to make a difference, you will make a difference. No one needs to power you up. You have some power within your being, within your school. So you decide, does power off mean we're powerless, or does it mean we have power to change the trajectory and make plans for the future? Ons sê altyd, as jy planne het, kan jy vorentoe gaan, but if our plans stop, we've got trouble. We're saying that schools are being affected. We saw that in the survey. We're saying learning is being affected, and this is the important one. I had a workshop with some principals over the weekend, and I asked them, what's the core business of school? And they said, oh, it's easy, it's teaching. I say, just say that again. They say, no, it's learning and teaching. Because even if we teach and no learning is taking place, we've got to focus on our core business. That means learning, not just teaching. Hopefully, it's a symbiotic relationship between the two. But let's focus on learning that is being affected in classes, with enriched classrooms, with technology, writing of a test in the darker corner of the class, all these things. What we see traveling around the country and from our provincial managers in all provinces is communication is being affected. You drive and suddenly the phone doesn't ring anymore. And suddenly we're disconnected from someone because we don't have communication. I heard someone say the other day that our mood is being affected because if you get to the office and you were stuck at a few traffic lights that were dead, you were half an hour longer in traffic, and you missed your coffee fix at home because you couldn't boil the water, suddenly you're not such a lacquer person. So it has a wide impact on us. And what we're seeing in the homes with the matric exams towards the end of last year, a lot of reports of studying at home being affected. There is a tax break for the parents, for the households now, but not all parents can take the benefit of that. And it's not such a big benefit. It's probably going to take 18 months to get that benefit back, but at least there is a step in the right direction. But at this point in time, for a public school, there was no relief in the budget speech, which we got some questions for the other day. So businesses can get relief on tax breaks, but nothing for schools at this point in time. So we've got to think differently. I always like, if you are one of my repeat offenders, you will know that I try and find us a little bit of a rhyme, a study rhyme to just remember the critical issues. And when preparing for this, I thought of 3 big S's. Number 1, it's a sustainability issue. Our planet's sustainability, our financial sustainability. The second one is survival. We need to be able to perform our core business tasks. And how do we stay alive in doing that? And then the surplus side of things, what if we could generate funding in the future with all the roofs that we have and actually start funding learning and teaching, start funding education because of the opportunities to us. I've just broken it down a little bit here, and this is not the seats to an aeroplane. I just looked at them and said, but even if it was just for sustainability, we should take action. Even if it's just for survival, we should take action. Even if it's just for financial surplus, we should take action. So you ask yourself the question, is it a red issue or a green issue? Yes or no? And if it's a sustainability issue that you want to address, yes, let's do something. And you can see all the combinations of 1 or 2 of the 3 elements being it. Only scenario number 8, we've got no problems. And I don't know where you are living then, but if you've got no problems, then you might say, but what should we do? And I still think that you should do something sustainable then. But it doesn't matter where your school sits at this point in time. I think it's time for us to take action. We did a short survey, just background on it. Within a few days, 191 schools participated. All 9 provinces represented and reported some information. The total number of learners in those schools, 133,000. But I want to extrapolate that and say it's all 13 million learners in South Africa that might be affected by the situation, and we've got to make some plans. ELSIN and hostels were included. A special report on the hostel schools that has even a bigger burden for the ELSIN and hostel schools, a bigger one. Some insights there, only 9% of schools reported that they are not severely affected by load shedding. 9%, so it's not a big issue. With 41% of schools so severely affected that they are considering alternative power options, and some of them have already acquired some. 89% of schools, just think about this one, 89% of schools report that they have not seen savings or reductions in municipal electricity costs despite extended power outages. Now, this means that we get grumpy, but the second one is our wallet, our budget gets grumpy, because that means that we are filling in with money already allocated to the budget with more money to keep the survival risk going. So there's a double spend already. It's not just, how do we do this so that we get a saving? We must stop the bleed of the double spend. And interestingly enough, and I'm hoping that this is on the good side of the coin, 82% of schools do not have a sustainability or environmental subcommittee of the SGB. I'm sure that this is such a big issue that this is all discussed on the SGB level. But if your school is not addressing the high risks, I'm putting my governance hat on. If your school is not addressing the high risk elements to sustain learning and teaching, to keep going business-wise, then you should probably focus on it with SGB subcommittee, or at least put it on the high on the agenda with your SGB meetings and make some plans. Just some pictures here. During load shedding, we have no power, 36%, alternative power, 14%, generator for the office, 30%, and generator for all. Only 20% include classes, and 14% might include classes. But we're looking at a massive 60-70% where classes are affected. Is the school able to absorb an increase of 18.6%? 11% say yes. The rest say no or not sure. I'm not going to spend time on the rest of the survey insights, and if we've got time at the end, I'll run through the report and show some more information there. But I want to welcome on stage, or to open their screen, Justin from Absa, Head of Renewable Energy, and Henry from Centricity. I'm going to give Henry the first chance to maybe just share with us some insights, what Centricity does. We were very much fascinated by the collaboration, the relationship that Absa and Centricity has in an effort to help address the problems at school. So Henry, I know you're a lawyer by profession, but you're in the energy world. Welcome to the FEDSAS stage this afternoon, and please share with us your insights and your presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and you can go ahead. But welcome, Henry, and please take the stage.
Thank you, Riaan, for those kind words. I think the new terminology these days is that I'm a legal practitioner by profession, and you are right to question my presence in this arena. But before I start referring to the slide, let's just give you a brief background of where I come from and how I came to be involved in this. By the very nature of my work, I've been co-opted by a lot of schools to sit on the school governing body to help with drawing up of contracts and that. And what we found endemic in all the schools was that they all had a problem with their services budget, with water and electricity. And I decided to at least have an attempt to try and resolve this matter and bring some effort to it. And we have developed two programs that basically relates, or developed two platforms that relates to the water and electricity efficiency and costs. So the company, if you refer to that slide, we are based in Johannesburg, and we started in 2012 already. It was founded by myself, Henry van Branden, and Ken Noons. I'm the CEO and Ken is the COO. And initially we specialize in analyzing municipal invoices, both water and electricity, through our proprietary online platform called First Look. Now, at the moment, we already have 18,000 invoices on that platform, covering about just under 100 schools. And we take the invoice as it is, load it on our platform, and extrapolate the information therefrom in order to make an informed decision on what it was. So originally, after the initial consumption study, both water and electricity, we advised the schools on the implementation of a series of energy and water efficiency measures. This is to more with a green agenda to advise the school how to be more environmentally friendly. And from that, we have developed two principal online applications, solar PV for schools, that is discussion for today, and also AquaStop that relates to this efficiency in water. And our aim is to maximize energy efficiency and water savings in schools. You can maybe go to the next slide, Sen. You will see from this slide then that the cost of electricity and the escalation, it is started from, Ken, if you can just go a little bit lower with the screen. If you can just go a little bit up to say we started in, if you look at the electricity cost in 2022, just a moment. We started, and the escalation of the cost, as was intimated by Riaan also, very soon in 2024, we'll start with a price of R5.03 per kilowatt hour. We are basically more or less concentrating only the schools in Gauteng. Apology if you can't see my video. Can you see me now?
You're back on video now. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to call you back, but
Yes.
I just wanted you to finish that slide. But yeah, keep
Right, yes.
it. It's good to see you.
The escalation, of course, it goes from R1 and something in 2022 to R5.03. And you can see, basically, it's shocking. And our data that we have gleaned from the invoices, it shows that a primary school on average in Gauteng consumes about 100,000 kilowatt hours a year. Multiply that by the rate of R5.03. You're looking at over R500,000 for the electricity account. And if we look at the high schools, that consumes 275,000 kilowatt hours, multiply that by 5. So you see in 2024, 25, the figures are already going to be astronomical. And schools, if you look at it in this broader gradual escalation, it's something that creeps on you. And I don't think the stipend or anything that comes from department sufficiently covers this steady and worrying increase. You can go to the next slide, Ken. These are just some of the schools that we have. We have, precisely because of the development and the initiation of solar PV for schools, we have helped Rivonia to install their backup system, Bryndale Primary. You can see it's a 100 kilowatt system. Next one, Ken. Northcliffe Primary. These are one of the, maybe the latest school that was installed. The next one, Ken. Northcliffe High, we've also assisted them through the tender process. The next one, Ken. Boekenhout Primary, these were the first initial ones. And I think this was done a few years ago with the sponsors of Absa. Next one, Ken.
Sorry, Henry, this Boekenhout was the Department of Energy.
Oh, the Department of Energy, yes. Apologies, Ken, yes. All right, now, basically, the process that we follow. Ken, I seem to be jumping with the pictures on my frame all over the show. All right, thank you. How the process of solar PV for schools works, or the app that we have developed. What we have found in our negotiations and discussions with schools, the schools are, with respect to them, ill-equipped to go through a proper, fair and transparent process that must comply with the Public Management Finance Act, the Schools Act, and also the regulations that govern the functioning of the SGBs. So what we have done via Solar PV for Schools is develop the app that the schools can sign in on. Not only schools, but also suppliers. And this will give the school a structured approach under our guidance and advice on how to avoid the typical pitfalls of going out on tender, and also to give the schools access to credible suppliers that they can use or to have a look at in order to make up their minds as to which supplier to use. So there's basically two sides to this process. It is a pre-tender and a tender process. What will happen is if a supplier or a school signs up to solar PV for schools, they will notify Solar PV for Schools and say, we have an interest in going green. How do we start this process? So what we do is we ask the school during the pre-tender process, as you see under one, the first column there, the school provides the electricity invoices for current and the past previous years. The reason why we need this invoices is to determine and indirectly size the amount of kilowatts that you need to have installed, amount of panels, and the size of your system. From that information, after you have uploaded it on First Look platform, we will design the solar capacity that your school needs, and it's an informed decision. And then Solar PV for Schools submits a proposal to the school. We will tell you, after analysis of your bills, you need this type of system, you need to have this type of storage, and we will be able to guide you to the process. Obviously, there's a fee attached to this, and the school listens to us and come and say, okay, we have decided, we discussed it, we can approve your thing. If the school goes on there, anybody goes on Solar PV for Schools, they click on that, so it say the school is out on a pre-tender process. The next one is the school creates the new tender, and in conjunction with the school, and we notify all the suppliers, credible suppliers that we know are players in this field, to make an expression of interest. And they can say, okay, we're interested in this proposal, let's do it. That is still out on the pre-tender process. And the notification on the solar PV for schools will say it's pending, it's out on tender. Then we assist the school to draft an expression of interest. In this expression of interest, we create the tender application. The suppliers then the platform displays that the tender's initial information. We want to notify them the deadline of this is that, the documents that's required in your expression of interest, documents you can download, and the form to submit it. This is just the expression of interest. We partner and accompany the school to that process. The next process we have the selection of suppliers. From the expression of interest, we have a deadline and say, if you want to be part of this tender, you must notify it by this date. Then the schools, also accessing the platform, can go on the platform and see which suppliers were interested in tendering on their project. And then they can select the suppliers in conjunction with us to say, we want these guys to tender on our process. And then we go out on tender. So when we go out on tender, step number 5, the school, in conjunction with us, we invite companies to a compulsory tender briefing at the school, to have a walk around in the school, say, these are the roofs we want to install the panels on, this is the place where the battery needs to be stored, to advise them properly. And all the tender documents are only released to the invited suppliers at the tender briefing. The date of submission is sent to the selected tenderers, and the tenders are received. And on the status of the solar PV for schools, it will be the tender is ongoing. Once the deadline for applications are reached, no further tenders will be accepted, and then it is the analysis, both ourselves and the school. We are not compelling to school, we are only in an advisory capacity. We also advise the schools to be au fait and do their necessary homework via solar PV for schools on the qualities of the suppliers, do their homework on previous jobs that they've installed, get some more feedback from them. And then the offline work is, we do the analysis, we do the reports, we attend meetings. And from that, the school will invite a shortlisted interview of suppliers that they are interested. Obviously, in conjunction with us, we accompany the school through those interviews and meetings. And after there is a fair idea of what the school was, the school governing body is left to their own to select the tenderer. We have no influence. We have to be seen to be impartial, independent, and have the suppliers and the school to be assured that the best supplier and the school's decision will be honored. We update the tender page, and then the tender is adjudicated. The agendas are submitted. If the school wants, we can accompany the installation process, keep an eye that it's done according to the Gantt charts on when they'll do, when they'll finish, advise the school what to do it. And at the end of the process, there is regulatory compliance with the Schools Act, the Public Management Finance Act, the Transparent and Fair Tender process. And we advise the schools, like the COC, Certificate of Compliance, that we advise the school to have at the end of this process a file for the successive SGBs to come and say there has been compliance with everything. This is the engineering certificate for the roof. This is the COC, the small scale embedded generation. It must be registered with either ESCOM or the municipality. So we can take and accompany school to the full process. It is important to note that we are not PV installers or suppliers or have any allegiance to any installer. Our main loyalty lies to the school to see that the school gets the best deal from competent suppliers. Thanks, Riaan.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. If I can sum it up, the words that we use in the Center for Finance is like, there is definitely something about specialist knowledge. And it's like building a building. You don't go and start building. You have an architect drawing up the plans first so that you know what the need is and where you're going with your budget. The second one is there's a difference between knowing a little bit about PV panels and something you see on Facebook versus understanding the needs and the specific application for your school. We always say everyone likes music, but not everyone are musicians. And there's a marked difference between liking music, knowing a little bit about it, and actually playing in a band. And it seems like that's the service that you're giving. So thank you for that. We'll get back in the panel discussion. Justin, if you can join us on stage and just share a little bit of the journey. Just take your time. We'll definitely get to the questions. But I let Henry go because that process is critical on understanding the value added to go data driven, understand the history, what you need is, and the compliance of application. What does Absa do for us? Ken, you might want to stop sharing your screen, please.
Yeah, thanks, Riaan. Let me get my screen up. Yeah, so what does Absa do? I think look, the starting point for us in any of the sectors we focus on. So I've got a couple areas that my team looks after, but for today we're just talking renewables. But I think at the start of any of these sector focuses, we really want thought leadership to be the key. So, researching in renewables, what the technologies are, what the regulation is, where the industry is going, and kind of starting with discussions like this. It's ultimately we are financier, so we do transactions, or clients use our platforms to transact, and we provide the funding for the capital. But really, kind of when we look at renewables into any sector, the clients are clients of ours in that kind of industry. So solar is just one of many needs, and we really hope that kind of through sharing like this, the right decision is ultimately made, and they've got an investment that over the long term works as they planned. So with that in mind, I'll just kind of give a view of what we're seeing nationally, from across all sectors in the energy sector, why this crisis is not disappearing anytime soon, and just to kind of explain what we're seeing across the board. So just from a macro environment, I will keep to the time limit. I think what's been an interesting trend is that if we look 3 years back in 2021, we were sitting, if we looked at how many days actually saw load shedding, so no matter what the stage, that we saw load shedding on one of those days, we were sitting at about 22% of all days. And we already thought then, geez, this is a lot of time to have load shedding, Then we looked to last year, and we saw 57% of days with load shedding. And now we all know we're at 100% for the year. And I don't know if that's one of the polls, but what will we end the year off at? And I mean, my view is that we're going to sit at over 90% for this year, just because of kind of what I'll share on the next slide. So in your poll, kind of, I forget the figure, but 9%, I think, of schools said energy is not an issue for them. I suppose that's probably because they're not using much energy, or they've got the full-blown solution. But really, in our experience, I mean, this impacts everyone, and really, the people that aren't impacted really don't have high energy usage, and they've got bigger issues to worry about than kind of fixing the load shedding crisis, because they've got a crisis in terms of energy every day. So, that's kind of the first thing that's spurring investment into solar, but then what else are we seeing nationally? So maybe let me carry on talking about this load shedding and what we see happening with it. So it's a bit of a busy slide, but let me just explain on the left. What we've mapped on the left is Eskom's figures, where they say what is the energy available on the grid. So theoretically, there's a generation capacity. If all of that's available, you get an energy availability factor of 100%. I mean, that's impossible, because you need to save energy for emergencies. You also need to maintain power plants. So what Eskom's predicting for this year is 68% energy availability. I'll get into the details of it's quite optimistic. When we look at last year, we sat at 58% energy availability. So that's probably realistic. And if you look at this graph that we're mapping out, there's the forecast. We were sitting at that kind of 7th week at about 55%, which is still below last year's average. So it's going to be difficult to get above last year's average if our weekly numbers are not hitting that number. And what's also kind of been happening in the country is that when you look at these lines, so from 2022, which is where the dotted line is, and that bottom left, but you go across kind of every year, energy availability is dropping. So meaning kind of the available capacity we have is less and less reliable, or it's on less and less of the time. So that's been driven by a couple of things. So for quite a while, we didn't do a lot of maintenance on these power plants. So if you're not maintaining, it's less reliable, which means kind of unplanned outages where you have more breakdowns. The other problem is we haven't put new generation capacity onto the grid quick enough. So I had a slide, but I took it out that our fleet is very old, and we really need new capacity, either private sector, schools like yourselves, manufacturers, or the big wind farms, etc. And while there has been progress there, it's behind what our plans are. So we've got this kind of shortfall that all our planning, it's like we're behind the plan. So now the availability, we're struggling because we don't have that new reliable capacity. So this table here is just kind of what Eskom produces on a weekly basis. So where we get this forecast is based on what Eskom supplies us, and they give you really good information, to look at and to plan with. But what we've got there is kind of total dispatchable energy, means that available. Then there is an element of planned maintenance, so they are planning to maintain. The problem is when you've got unplanned maintenance, which is on the right there, the higher that is, the harder it is to do your maintenance, and it's kind of a vicious circle. The other kind of worrying thing here is that we sit at 13,000 megawatts unplanned outage at the moment. We were sitting at about 35% unavailable. So if you just divide that 13 by 50, you get to 26%. So it shows you there that kind of we're not performing as planned. There's a lot more unplanned outages. So then when we look at the shortfall, actually kind of, there's a lot to make up based on these trips. So I think in the short term, sorry, Riaan, it's saying I'm unstable here.
We can still hear you. You can continue, okay. But you did break up a microsecond there, but continue. You're good.
Yeah, sorry, probably load shedding somewhere. But so I think the point being that load shedding's definitely in the short to medium term, it's something we're still dealing with. And here there's these shortfalls, that could mean stage 1 if you look at the top. But we know that we had more unavailable capacity. So you are probably looking, if you add 4,000 megawatts to that, you're looking at stage 4 or 5. So we do think there's a high risk for the remainder of the year and into next year until we get more reliable generation as well as more grid infrastructure on board. Okay, so that's kind of, solar is kind of going to continue growing because of that, and there's a need to address those needs. Then you were saying, Riaan, in the presentation, I'll rush now because I know I'm running out of time. A lot of the respondents were saying my energy bill hasn't gone down in spite of load shedding. I think also when people put solar in a couple of years later, they're saying, well, the energy bill there's still an energy bill, right? Unless you go completely off the grid, the unfortunate part is that these tariffs carry on going up. So if you save 18% of the energy bill through solar, but the rate goes up, it's not exact science, but it goes up 18%. You're getting back to that figure. So unfortunately, there is kind of this increasing cost trend, but that's been driving a lot of our clients to invest in solar. So the 18%, if you're an Eskom client, you're going to see your bill go up on the 1st of April by 18%. And if you're a municipal client, on the 1st of June, you'll see that bill go up by 18.65%. Next year, there's a 12% increase. So I think, this is just making solar a lot more of an option. What's interesting, though, is that the break-evens we're seeing in some areas where there's under 2-year break-even on solar alone. You double the cost when you put batteries in. But that means essentially you're saying, well, now the break-evens on that installation, if it was 2 years, it's 4 years. So there's been this kind of rapid decrease in the break-even for solar, but also because it's come down so much, batteries are becoming more of an option and viable option. The next thing, it's kind of driving not just solar, it's the battery side as well, is this cost of diesel. It's doubled over the last decade, the cost of running it. The fact that you're running these generators more often means the maintenance more expensive. So just the cost of a generator is a lot more, and it's being used a lot more frequently. So that's bringing solar into the equation with batteries. So I'll quickly kind of touch on the trend we've seen, but I'm going to go straight to the right and then go to kind of what we finance. But on the right here, 2021, we saw 1, 2 in 10 applications have batteries included. The year before, it was substantially lower than that. It was maybe 2 in 20, if that high. Last year, we saw 1 in every 2 applications on the right there have battery integration, and that's growing even more. So it's because of those 3 kind of business cases that I was talking about that we are seeing, solar plus batteries, and to the extent where we see some clients go completely off grid. It's not something we say go do, but it's becoming more viable that people are saying, well, I don't even need a connection. I'm going to build our own power network. Okay, so what does the bank look at? So we focused on the sector of renewables, but we also focus on schools as a bank. So my colleagues in public sector, it's a big focus for us to support schools. And partnerships like what we have with Centricity. I think for us, number 1 is understanding your energy needs. So that's what I like about the value proposition there. But it's not only energy needs, it's also the water, etc. It's your general utility bill. How do you reduce your cost before you go on a project like this? And how do you understand your usage so that when you install solar, install batteries, you've reduced before you've started building this massive power plant? So that's the first thing. I think when we look at funding then, generally we use what's kind of flicking on your screens here, the green asset finance. And what we've said there is let's use the asset finance product, because then we don't tie in your security as a client. We also structure the deal so that, and I know schools are different, but we look at what the cash flows are when you have your energy bill, what are you paying the utility, and then we try and make sure that you are paying the bank less through your loan than you were the utility. So that's how we structure it. We go from 5 to 10 years on those products. I know with schools, the question might be, can we reduce the term? Yeah, definitely, but it squeezes the cash flows. And I think ultimately what we've seen from clients is that these are big CapEx investments. So how do we bring in the funding element so you're not using the short-term cash to finance a long-term investment? I think, we've seen it reduce cost, but like Ken said, standardizing, using the right people and getting quality, I think ensures that you can kind of save yourself costs. I think by hedging your future costs, that's a big kind of operational element that versus other schools that don't do this or other businesses, you're hedging those long-term issues. Energy is going to be reliable for the next 2 years. Batteries last 10 years on warranty. Inverters generally have a 7-year useful lifespan. They're warranted, and then panels 20 years. So really kind of what we've seen from clients is this is a long-term investment that supports you in the long term. Thanks, Riaan.
Justin, thanks so much. I think we're going to jump straight into some comments and Q&A. We always maybe run a little bit out of time because it's just so interesting. I didn't cut you short because I'm thinking that you're answering some of the questions by continuing with what you're talking about there. Very interesting. Technology has advanced, so suddenly it is becoming more palatable budget-wise to do. Secondly, doesn't matter the cost. None of us make a calculation on what the payback is on a school building, and this is like infrastructure now. You need this to do it. So yes, I'm happy with thinking payback, but I'm also happy with thinking what is the risk if we don't do this? We're going to stop schooling and learning and teaching. So yeah, maybe not just a financial discussion. What's the payback? Someone asked a question: will the Department of Education support schools? We're working on it because I think we must make this part of the infrastructure norms and standards discussion because school must go on. And then a few other good questions. I'm going to jump right into it. Ken and Henry, if you want to open your mics and we're in the process of obtaining quotations to install solar energy for our schools. Should we be normalizing load shedding? I'm not sure 100% what they're asking. I don't think it should be normal. We should just be managing it. I don't think it's Eskom's intention to have it, but by continuing to adapt, we are enabling the government to not fulfill their mandate. Exactly. But hopefully the bottom-up push will help the top-down pull. If more and more bigger installations take place, there's a less of a burden on the grid. Once we think about the future of the surplus, this is one of the best investments we're going to make. I read a story about Vietnam quadrupling their power efficiency, power supply by household roofs and school roofs and business roofs. So yeah, any thought on that? Should we be normalizing it? I think we should probably ask the question, should we be normalizing stage 4 and 5 versus stage 1 and 2, Justin?
Yeah, I'm not on mute. So normalizing, I think what we're seeing in the industry is a move for privatization. It's, having one producer is a risk. I think the other side where you're saying it's part of infrastructure, these are reliable investments that become part of your general kind of CapEx requirements. But ultimately what we're seeing with our business clients is that, so number one, if you're independent pulp producer, I'll talk about that next, but really our business clients that are investing, it is kind of a CapEx return on investment decision. And it's to say, well, I'm saving costs by doing this. So it actually, I'm benefiting from a better alternative. And I just do think, there's a move, and it's generally, we've seen it through the regulations, that we've seen it through the tax incentives as well, that, Treasury's allowed you to write solar off for years against your tax bill. And so I think generally government has supported the move to kind of greener energy, more private sector participation. So yes, I agree that it is something that should be delivered, but I think each person has their own business case where they say, well, actually, this private investment is a better business case, so I'm going to go for that alternative supply rather than the traditional. Yeah. Thanks, Riaan.
Henry, any comment on that?
Yeah, I should just say it is a little bit not a negative point of view with respect to say we are normalizing load shedding. I would look to it in a positive spin off and see this is more a decentralization of the power generation. And we have this concept that's taking place in the market now of the prosumers, where the school that is a consumer could also produce. And with the new regulatory framework that's coming in, where you get net metering, and that I think it would only have more positive spin of the negatives for the schools to go the PV route, because you get the cost of saving, avoiding the escalation of the costs, and you also have the security of your own supply. So I think the benefits far outweighs what could be negative for the school.
Yeah. I see we're somewhat on our time. Ken, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to ask the audience if it's okay. We're going to continue back for 5 minutes. I see we're close to our closing time, but I think it's pertinent questions, and we still have a lot of people online. So just give us 5 minutes, Leeway. I think it's valuable information, and we've got some questions coming in as we talk. So give us 5 minutes, and then we'll close with the most pertinent questions. Ken, just to add to that.
Can I share my screen?
Someone has to stop there. Yeah, quickly share. Yeah,
and it will be very quickly. One of the things we always like to do when we is looking at normalizing and paying back. This is a school we've just done a study on. 2021, they spent 1.574 million on electricity, just adding 7.5% over a period of 25 years, which is the lifespan of the PV system. You will see that within 5 years, just on that 7.5%, they're spending 10 million, 4.5 million, 9.5 million. If you're spending that kind of money, this 9 million on a system in the school to reduce your cost, because this is a cost issue. It's not for me. It's a generation issue, and there's an issue regarding load shedding. But this all started when we started seeing the increases in costs. So from 1.57 million a year, it gives you 111 million at 7.5%. And we already know this year is going to be 18%. So that's all I wanted to make you aware of that,
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. And it takes me back to my picture or my slide with the green and yellow blocks. If this was not a load shedding issue, if this was not a survival or a surplus issue, if it was just a sustainability issue, this was a pertinent discussion. Santi, if you can share the other question there. There's a question about rural schools. Yes, for all issues, there's how should we do something to help the rural schools, but maybe we can't necessarily address that in a meeting like this, and we'll probably have to have a discussion with those schools and come up with a plan. But at least we're sitting with some players around the table now, and I know that Absa has plans for the upliftment. The greener energy, I think we've touched on it. How feasible would it be for South Africa to depend on greener energy resources as opposed to fossil fuels? I think that debate is going to be on for a while. We still have sustainable and quality fossil fuels as well, but I think the drive is definitely more towards that. we've got lots of wind, we've got lots of sun. In fact, more than 350 days of sunshine a year in Joburg. It's for free, but we got used to being comfortable. So head of renewables, Justin, will it be feasible? It's still expensive now, but it's becoming cheaper.
Well, yeah. So look, solar is, like, if you look globally, solar it is the cheapest energy source when you look at a kilowatt hour, but it doesn't produce load, base load. So that's why they always talk about kind of, for variable, you need gas, you need batteries as well. As head of renewable, I mean, look, I also look after transport logistics, and I was in Mpumalanga over the weekend, and there's a lot of coal being moved. The big point is we've got an energy plan. Coal has to be part of the mix still. So it's not like we're going to switch everything off. And I think as renewables come in, we finance one of these mines that is using batteries, solar plus batteries, it supports them. So look, I think that brings down your carbon footprint. It is an important part of the mix, but I don't think as a country we can go 100%, because when you think sustainability, it's about sustainability. There's an E in ESG, but it's also social, the social element. So we still need job creation. We need these other energy sources, not just because of the environmental impact, but because they do create jobs and they are important parts of our economy. We've got an energy plan. We're not going to shut off all the coal off. So I think everything has a role to play, and it's about the business case as well. And they all have good business cases.
Happiness. The quick one on top there: no, schools do not benefit by subsidy on solar or the tax break, I'm assuming. Businesses and households. Can suppliers be shared? Ken, Henry, maybe you guys can hit those two questions. What is the cost for doing the feasibility study? Because I think that's the starting point. Do we know what we know? There's a question a little bit down that says, how can we reduce energy consumption? By measuring what you're wasting. So just as a last note to that, and then we'll close and stick around and see who else is available for more. But those three questions, number 1, number 2, and number 4, on the screen there. Henry.
And if you could take the costs.
Ken?
Ken?
I don't hear Ken.
Ken, your mic is muted.
There, am I talking to myself? Henry described the process that we go through, where we have the pre-tender analysis or the pre-tender analysis and the management of the tender process. And the cost of the pre-tender analysis to get you to the first stage is 7,500. We're in discussion with FEDSAS to have an agreement with them for a discount for their members. To go to the tender process on the platform, it's 22,500. And again, we will offer, if we get an agreement with FEDSAS, we will be able to do something there as well in terms of cost. So they're the principal two numbers that you, I think, wanted.
Thanks. Guys, we ran out of time. I'm going to close the session. There's some of the questions we've already addressed. And then we'll see. It seems like the numbers are dropping off as well, but the session was advertised for 45 minutes, which we usually do, and we understand and respect people's time. Ilza, I don't know if you want to just close for us. Henry, where do we go if we want to ask questions? Maybe I should just deal with it and say, if there's any questions out of this session, please contact me. My email address is Riaan, RIAAN @fedsas.org.za. Please contact me so I can put you in touch with our suppliers or our partners here. None of them supply necessarily anything, but that we can get the discussion going. I'll just pass on the call. You see on our screen our provincial managers, whom you should and would know better on the ground level. They can all pass on information to me, and we can continue the discussion. I want to thank Centricity, Henry and Ken. I want to thank Justin and the rest of the Absa team in the back office at the moment. This one came up quickly on us, but it's so important seeing the number of people that registered and attended today. We know there are many questions. I want to say thank you to everyone. I see there's some dropping off. Ilse, is there anything more from an admin side? Then we're going to just say, let's take a 10-second breather and see who sticks around. And we continue the discussion. So if there's some more questions, if Absa and Centricity stay around, I'm happy to have an informal discussion at the door going out or by the coffee table in a virtual space. But let's call the meeting, and thank you for your participation. There will be a link to everyone, and we will follow up with a short survey to just understand how we can serve our schools better. So thank you very much. Maybe just close last 10 seconds, Justin, and last 10 seconds, Henry. Justin?
Well, I think, yeah, please reach out. I think this is a journey. There's a lot of people that have gone on this journey already. Yeah, so please just kind of reach out to us. We've got a lot of information we can share. Thanks, Riaan. Thanks to everyone for organizing.
Thanks,
this.
Justin.
Thanks, Justin. Just from my side, yes, we will answer any of the questions that you address on a one-on-one basis with the school and also copy you on it. And I think the journey is quite exciting for us. The main thing is just to give fair value for the schools, and that is basically been our aim, fair value from reputable suppliers, because a lot of mistakes has been made in the past, and I think some guidance and a structured framework will go along to assisting this process to come to fruition. Thanks, Riaan.
Perfect. Please don't go away. We're going to see if anyone leaves at this point in time. Santi, if you want to share the questions again, and it's as if we're standing in the front of the hall and a lot of people come to the front and ask questions at the front desk in an informal way, because I think there was still some good questions out there, and maybe we can just, this is kind of the offline version of the discussion. I see we still have more than 100 people online, so I think it's pertinent. The question about the Department of Education, maybe I just want to touch on it again and say, yes, FEDSAS will always be acting on behalf of its members and in the best interest of the schools and child, and be in discussions with government. That's one of the strongest value adds that I think we bring. We sit at the PCF, Provincial Consultative Forum level, as well as the National Consultative Forum level, and we are a voice as a partner in education around the table. And this discussion will definitely take place there for our members and for the legal framework and the sector in the whole. I know that Centricity and Absa is in discussions with the Gauteng Department of Education. So yeah, the communication lines are open, but I don't see anything yet. Justin mentioned something to the fact that the Fiscus has taken steps of rebates and tax breaks, but we might want to revisit that given the extent of the issues. If you participate in surveys, we have proper information to act on your behalf. So share with us everything that you can, but we need to keep the lights on.
Can I
yes.
respond to the question, can list of suppliers be shared?
Yes.
It will all be shared when schools register on solar PV for schools.co.za. There'll be a back office that they'll be able to go to, and they'll be able to see all the data regarding what we consider qualified suppliers. And a lot of these are coming from Absa, who have already gone through a massive process of selecting suppliers, and they have actually qualified suppliers. They're reference suppliers as far as Absa is concerned. Maybe Justin can speak about that. But it will all be shared on the platform.
Yeah, Riaan, if I could maybe just come in regarding the Department of Education. The Schools Act and the regulations published thereunder, it's fairly strict on under what conditions a school or a SGB can incur a financial burden that lasts longer than the term of the SGB. Now, there's a form that needs to be filled in and boxes that needs to be ticked. And one of those boxes are, was the decision for the school to incur the financial burden like the PV, was it approved at the AGM? So if that wasn't done, the department will not give its approval. So the schools need to be attentive to all these facts. Has it been approved by the AGM? Was the budget allowed in the school's budget for the year, for the term? And once all those conditions are satisfied, I think the MEC will sign off on it. It is a quite technical and tedious process. And I think the bottleneck is caused because of non-compliance by the schools, maybe due to lack of technical skills on how to properly complete the form. Because what schools have the vision? We have this crisis now to install solar PV. The AGM is long past. So you fill in the form, you send it to the MEC. This thing hasn't been discussed on the annual general meeting. It will not be approved. So there's a steady process and regulations that needs to crystallize to properly have conformance and compliance in order to expedite the process. Because most of the schools, and especially working with the bank, Absa does the difficult point of checking the credit worthiness of the school and assumes most of the risk. That recommendation can go with the application to the MEC and say, we would not want to take this out of our cash flow, out of our budget. We have enough money to service the debt over a certain period. And I think all those factors is properly motivated will facilitate the approval of the MEC, which proves to be a major bottleneck.
Yeah, happy with that. And thank you for mentioning that. We actually should have touched on that with the full audience here, but yeah, that's a critical one, and that's not a solar energy one. That's not a PV panel issue. That is just procedural issues. And if there is any loan, any longer term agreement that the SGB is struggling to get through the processes at the provincial education department to get MEC approval, please contact your FEDSAS provincial manager so that we can assist in expediting that and making sure we go there. Yeah, but very pertinent for this. The issue is basically it's too expensive to buy it cash, and the difficulty is on an agreement. It's too difficult to get approval, so we keep on paying increased rates. It's like buying a can of Coke every day instead of somewhere buying a 2 liter and drinking it for 3 days at a third of the price. You know, so we've got to break the cycle and just draw a line in the sand there. Have you seen an increase in school applications? Possibly a little unfair to Justin, but that might be from the banking side. I don't know if anyone else in the Absa team has an answer there. I'm assuming yes, but do you have any idea of how the migration is going on that? I think what the question gets to is, if everyone is doing it, if someone does it, a lot of people will follow. Is there critical mass? Is there momentum?
Yeah, so not to get straight to your question, but I think quite clearly we've seen, Riaan, that there's been an increase in requests for solar just generally, across the board. I think what's been interesting from my side, and I think it relates to what you're talking about, you need MEC approval versus other industries where you just, you don't even need to go to the board. You are the CEO and you make that call with your CFO. So I think that how do we kind of work together to figure out those processes? For me in the industry, and I'll get to that question, but while we deregulate, there's also a need to follow the right practices, and we sponsor something called the PV Green Card, and as a bank there's still grid compliance, there's still all these other things. So while you are going to roll out solar and there's going to be this huge adoption, there's also kind of sometimes the regulation is good, So I don't know, like following those processes, getting this into the AGM, it all sounds like the right kind of idea to me. It's just how do you kind of make it smoother for everyone and make it easier to follow that practice. And from a school's perspective, we have in the past seen a lot of schools install solar through our other portfolio where we finance independent power producers. So those companies go to a school, and it's generally more the private schools where they don't have to go through that process, I assume. But they'll say, we'll rent your roof from you. We're putting the solar up. We'll charge you a lower fee for your energy, and then we've got all this roof space that we push it back in. So that's where we've seen the demand, and we have seen a growth in that area. Personally, we are seeing interest, but we're not seeing a lot more funding because of what you're saying. There's this process, and it does kind of it's almost a handbrake versus kind of all the other businesses that are just going forward on this. Yeah.
So the interest is definitely up, but we'll have to go there. I've got that last question there, and then we're going to close the informal discussion as well and take it to provincial managers at ground level, or contact the Centre for Finance and Risk Management after this, if you've still got a pertinent question. Can a hostel install without education department approval? All my answers start with, it depends. If it's cash, you don't need loan approval if you pay cash. But you need approval for improvements and additions to departmental buildings if you want to loan, and it's a school hostel, or if it's a private hostel, different story. So there's more to that. In many cases, you will have to jump through hoops, but some hostels will have freedom. Please contact me on that one, and I'll get more of the background and the context, and we can advise properly with our legal department in that.